The clues. The rebellion, Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Bernardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Bernardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. As he set foot on the island, Bernardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Bernardo felt, why had he? Had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper without causing a catastrophe. Why? Maybe it's always dangerous, he imagined Zenobia saying. Always the voice of reason, that one. Well, there had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper because not being able to use it was boring. So there. Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart, but fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Hey, is there a word for a lot of ravens? Like a doofus of ravens?
There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like he carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Well, of course. If you've just assembled a... Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction. And, hopefully this time, just his destruction. A legendary weapon. Renato. Renato had found his game changer. He would ignore all distractions, focus on the Sky Ripper. things loaded anyway? Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper. At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried toad.
He knows more than anyone.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. One way or another, there had to be a safe way to use it. Maybe it was the cold, but after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump. What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends, or attack enemies. Even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies, some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, it wasn't all that much simpler. No. Physics made his brain. That, at least, he was sure of.
You think at this rate, the Imperial Army would run out of ravens?
Tried to... Yeah. focusing all his energies on the Sky River. If Calaveras could not fix it, he'd be out of options. He would have to assault the Imperial fleet empty-handed. Calaveras had never let him down.
Yeah, of course I can make it work better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strings, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 128 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.71 sixes in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once, Renato said. Although he wasn't sure that was entirely right.
Yeah, that's not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look, just don't use it ever.
All right, I guess. As he sailed towards the fleet, Renato could see the dropships of the rebels coming out of the clouds. This was it. The big battle. They could not afford to lose this one. What if it didn't go well? What if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he risk the entire universe in the throw of a dice? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21? Or was it 2.71? 6s in a row. He had a feeling they were surprisingly good. That is, bad. Anyway, the odds were big. They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper. Or the Iblis. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case.
You know what I hate about you guys? Everything.
Someone had told him the odds didn't change just because he'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though, and he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win, but one of them would destroy the universe. That seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Sky Ripper. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in cards, when you had 3 knaves, but you pretended you had a fizz-bin. That could work. I wondered where he could find a snack. He was feeling a bit peckish. He set up the Sky Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. "You won't actually use that," she said in that annoying, "I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox" voice she had. Or "I know the odds." Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't. He felt sure the odds were with him. You have to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. Fire, he said. Please? The Sky Ripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. And then he noticed there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Reynardo, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Reynardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. As he set foot on the island, Reynardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Why had he chosen the sky? The sky... Sky Ripper without causing a catastrophe. Why? Maybe it's always dangerous, he imagined Zenobia saying. Always the voice of reason, that one. Well,
There had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper, because not being able to use it was boring. So there. There it was. Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway.
The device was intricate. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him.
Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the...
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
There were fewer and fewer. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest. The mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry, too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin.
He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move.
There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Renato had never been much of a student. At Sword Fu School, he'd never read the books, just looked at the... As he set out down the path, Renato wondered why the parts of the Sky Ripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III, had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction.
And, hopefully this time, just his destruction.
Whee! I don't have anyone to talk to. He was tired of slaughtering ravens. Maybe it was time to test out the new weapon. He turned a knob on the Sky Ripper. It made strange, mechanical noises. The wheels spun faster. It began to hum.
The Sky Ripper was following his every step. At least it acknowledged him as the master. But there was no trigger. How was he supposed to fire it? Fire, he said. Nothing happened. Well, maybe it just needed to warm up. After all, it...
The Sky Ripper was making a whining noise now, and its wheels were spinning so fast he could no longer see them.
Renato had a thought. Please? He asked. The Sky Ripper began to glow. Boom! The outpost burst into flame.
Ravens flapped out screaming, wings on fire. The base was his. The far speaker toad came hopping out.
Renato!
It croaked, sounding like a toad version of Zenobia.
Don't use the Sky Ripper. It will destroy the world.
Yeah, sure it will, cracked Renato. Pull the other one.
If you don't trust me, go see Calaveras.
That sounded sensible. Why did she always have to sound sensible all the time? Oh, it was infuriating.
Of course she would say that. He was supposed to hurry and bring the Sky Ripper to the council so the rebels could actually win the war. But what if she was right? Damn it.
Zenobia was so...
Renato landed on the island, expecting Zenobia's ambush at any moment.
God, after all these years, she still drove him crazy. Unless they were part of the ambush, the obvious ravens he was meant to see to take his mind off the ones he wouldn't see. There did seem to be a lot of ravens around here. Zenobia's ambush never materialized. Could she be sincere? Calaveras was a great scholar. Renato doubted even Zenobia could convince him to say something he didn't believe. And if he was working for the Empire, he'd never have told Renato about the Skyripper in the first place. Well, he would listen to the wise old toad. But that didn't mean he had to agree.
Getting nowhere. Fast. To his alarm, Renato realized that the rebels had no way of knowing he had a powerful new weapon. He might set off on their attack of the fleet before he could bring the Skyripper to the fight. He had to hurry, while there were still rebels to save.
Calaveras examines the Skyripper eagerly. Oh, how often does a new relic surface? He brushed off Zenobia's warning. Oh, what a sorceress know about physics. However, he did know a few ways to make the weapon even more precise and more powerful, and quickly went off to tinker. Soon the Skyripper no longer whined, but thrummed like a hummingbird taking off. It was ready for war.
And so, Renato thanked Calaveras and took the legendary weapon to the final battle. But where were the other rebel ships? Had something happened?
He could defeat the Imperial fleet with a Skyripper, but he couldn't govern. He was not cut out to be Emperor, and he'd no desire to be one. There were a few rebel ships here and there, but there was no organization to the battle. Where was the Council flagship? Something had gone terribly wrong.
But he had the Skyripper. and the ravens had nowhere they could hide. The portal was heavily guarded. Must go someplace he really didn't want him to go.
Have you ever felt you were just going round in circles? Renato felt like that.
The council speaker was on the deck, bleeding. Why was she even here?
They found our base, she croaked. The council, all dead. We must surrender.
No, we can still win this, said Renato. I have the Sky Ripper. He would be a real hero and save the day, even when all appeared to be lost.
You're a good boy, said the speaker. And then she died.
Fired at the Sky Ripper. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. And for good measure, he played the beam around it, setting all the other nearby Imperial ships on fire too. And he watched them burn.
See? He could use the Sky Ripper safely.
The few remaining rebels gave a cheer. And then they stopped cheering. There was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger. Crates were falling off ship decks, upwards into the hole. And the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror as it poured into the ravenous hole. He guessed that somewhere behind that ever-widening hole were gods that had long been exiled. But it didn't really matter. Time was done for here, and soon it was.